don't remember asking you a goddamn thing.
Hello, Internet. Welcome back to the podcast that no one asked for. My name is Guy.
And this is Babs.
And no one asked for this. Today, we will be discussing The Boys, Season 2. Bum, bum, bum. Babs, what's your gut reaction to The Boys Season 2?
My gut reaction was, it's totally rewatchable. If you can withstand the exploding heads.
I would say the barrier to entry for most people in watching The Boys is definitely, it's gross.
Yeah.
I don't even want to say it's violent. It's not just violent, it's gross. My gut reaction is, with all due respect to the MCU, this is how you tell a comic book story in a multimedia, whatever, video format. MCU is great, but this, what's the plot of season 1? Who cares? What's the plot of season 2? Who cares? It's just hanging out with the characters interrupted by moments of awesome. Awesome could be action, awesome could be violence, awesome could be whoa, awesome could be wait, what? It is just, doesn't matter who the hero is or who the villain is or what their plans are. You're just with the story, colorful characters, costumes, intrigue, all the things that a comic book needs to be successful, and the reason why a lot of people read them when we were all younger. The Boys has all of that wrapped in a gross package, but that's my gut reaction. So we're gonna get into our categories, and the first one we're gonna do today is Nobody Actually Cares, the online outrage. And I'll start. No one actually cares, but Aya Cash, who played Stormfront, did a great job performing as liberal influencer, which was a cover. Great job when she showed her psychotic, murderous rage, like the first dude when she started killing all the black people in the apartment building and then choked out telekinetic guy. Those were like completely believable and interesting. And then when she turned into Nazi playing the extremely long game, and when you kind of got to know what her plan was, and when she was like begging, telling Homelander all that stuff, she didn't really land that. So no one actually cares, but her first 2 iterations of her character this season, those were my favorite, and those were the ones I think that Aya Cash performed the best. What about you?
I don't know what the internet has to say about this, but as we were watching season 2, you get to know Homelander's son. And there's this whole thing that everyone is so worried that they don't want him to turn out like Homelander. But I just don't understand why anyone would think that he would. Like, why would he turn out like Homelander's a psychopath? Obviously, but Homelander was raised in a lab with no parents. So it makes sense that he's a psychopath. This boy, he's under some weird conditions, but he's not. So I just don't understand. If you think that about that boy, you should be worried about that with everybody who has superpowers. Everybody who has superpowers has the ability to be absolutely menacing and psychotic. So why are we so worried about this little boy?
I don't care much about that kid, one way or another. He's an interesting idea, but the story would take too long to fully flesh out, and he can't be the focus. He won't be the focus, and so they
basically shuttled him away somewhere for the end of the season. So
you have to show that, for better or for worse, all of these heroes just start as kids, and their path isn't set in stone, and whatever they grew up to be, good, bad, or indifferent, is a result of their environment as much as it is whatever having powers. So that kid is more just there as that totem, as it were, but he doesn't fucking matter to me at all. Which, Next up, we're going to talk about the most memorable moment. Babs, what is your most memorable moment?
The one that have decided on is driving a boat through a whale. Just like you were saying earlier, it's like gross and over the top and ridiculous. So the scene plays out like the good guys, if you will, the boys are escaping not escaping. They were trying to go to this island. Why were they trying to go to the island?
Exactly. Doesn't matter.
I don't remember. I just know they were. And then the Deep finds out, and he's trying to help. He's trying to stop them so that he can get back into Seven. And he calls upon all his fishy friends, and like gets a whale up in front of them. But then they drive the boat through the whale, and then they're like in the whale, and they come out covered in like guts and shit. And then the one guy who everybody just makes fun of for being like a total...
Jack Quaid.
Yeah. He's still...
What's his name in the show?
I can't remember right now.
Doesn't matter.
He's like sitting...
The audience proxy.
In the boat, inside of the whale, just like... He's like... Looks completely despondent, like he's about to give up. And that just whole scene of just... climbing out of the whale's belly, if you will, like that you drove a boat through and destroying the whale completely is a ridiculous scene. But most memorable for me.
I don't remember why they were on the boat in the first place. I just know they started being chased by the Deep, aka Aquaman, and it was a cool sequence of him getting all his sea creatures, and then next thing you know, they drive the boat through the whale, and it was amazing. And it was followed up by the Stormfront, I guess, heel turn, or when the audience becomes aware of just how crazy she is. So it was like a whole memorable sequence within the episode anyway. But I will go, my second choice is so there's this, I don't know the actress's name, and I don't know the on-screen character's name, but she's basically an AOC stand-in congresswoman or senator.
Oh,
I don't know
okay.
which one she is, but she is doing like a little rally with regular people outside of the VOT headquarters in New York, and Homelander shows up and his normal creepy, terrible thing, but the crowd turns on him, and then it shows him lasering the entire crowd, basically murdering like hundreds of people. And it turned out to, it was one of those all too common things that you see in movies where you see something and it turns out the character was just imagining it.
Yeah, but it's so believable for him. You're like, yeah, he did that.
Yeah, but for a moment you thought, oh shit, like he just murdered a shit ton of people for no reason.
Because
how is he going to get away with it?
You would expect that from him. Like, you're like, oh yeah, that definitely happened. And then you're like, oh, that was just him just thinking about it.
Yeah. So that's why, I chose it because they got me. I don't always get tricked by that kind of storytelling, but they got me. For a second, I was like, oh shit. And then it turned out to be a fantasy that he was, playing out in his head. It was my most memorable moment. It was also the catalyst for why he let Stormfront basically use him in her Nazi bullshit or whatever. But most memorable moment. Next up, background bums and or bosses. Babs, bums or boss?
It's a bum. I tried to think of a boss, but, we all know who is boss and who isn't. And so, for me, I went with the Deep as the bum character for this season. I just felt like he's
not exactly background, but I'll guarantee it.
Listen,
he's one of the main characters. He's a principal actor.
His whole, the Church of the Collective stuff and, he's like talking to his own gills. He's tripping on something and talking to his own gills. It just was not. It didn't grab me as an interesting. The Church of the Collective thing. I get how that's going to play in for future stuff, but I wanted to hit the snooze button on that stuff, so I'm giving it a bum. He's
funny and he's interesting and he's an audience favorite. His character had nothing to do this season, literally nothing. So they just kind of plugged him into random places. Every time the episode cut to what he was doing, I was like, oh, this is
like, oh, let me just go to the bathroom.
But the audience likes him. I understand he's one of the more popular people, and I like the performance, and he seems cool to me. He just had no plot reason to be there at all.
Yeah, you could have left him out of the story, and nothing would have changed, really.
Right. My background players, I'm going to give out a boss. And it's going to go to Iceman / Lamplighter. This one, I definitely don't know that actor's name, but the actor that played Iceman in the X-Men movies showed up as basically a version of Pyro, which is I think a great wink wink to the audience as a casting choice to have Iceman playing Pyro. But he had a really emotional story. From what, he seemed like we had seen so many different versions of the result of superpowers, and they introduced a couple different new versions in this season, like the guy that was like cutting off his arm for money or whatever. It's basically like a superhero whore.
Yeah, he had the Deadpool power where he can just regrow himself, basically.
Yeah.
But he was just using it to
So they had
out.
superhero whore, and then they had and last season they had like Pop Claw, which is like fall from grace. Like these essentially heroes are stand-ins for celebrities in this story. So they're obviously, you can get famous and then be no longer famous or much less famous or whatever in reality, and they have versions of that. And this one was a former member of the Seven, so he reached the highest high, A-list superhero who fucked all the way up and made a mistake big enough that basically got him like buried. People didn't even know if he was still alive or not. He was so buried. So he's almost like he was in hero witness protection, essentially. And he ends up killing himself, committing suicide. But the way the actor played it, and he had some really funny moments. He had some really tender moments. He basically had a face turn because he helped the good guys, the boys. But I'm gonna make him my background boss just for that performance and the great choice of casting.
I was thinking about picking that as a boss.
Next up, special shout outs. I'll go first on this one, I suppose. My special shout out's going to the special effects team. I couldn't imagine working on the effects of this or being the effects supervisor, looking at these scripts and being like, how the fuck am I gonna do that? They have practical effects, they have CGI effects, and anything you can imagine that can happen with a human body, they are going to try to show it. People are disemboweled, people's heads are exploding, people's heads are crushed, they're exploding whales. They have the Darth Vader effect at the end for Stormfront. Even when they were just having sex, it was weird.
Oh yeah.
I mean, everyone has their different glow shit that they do. Some people glow, some people laser, some people the electricity. There's so many different effects that they have to render and make believable within a show that they give my special shout out. What about you, Babs?
So my special shout out goes to it goes to Fresca. I don't know. I think there might be something in that Fresca. I don't. It's the official branded drink of the Church of the Collective. Everybody drinks it if you're...
Which is essentially their Scientologists.
Yeah, basically. Everybody drinks it. They're always drinking it. I'm just wondering if they got something in there. It's spiked with something. I don't know.
Well, if you're going to get your Energon pod game right, or whatever they become when you die, then...
You got to get that Fresca on.
There was a lot of Fresca. I thought that you can sometimes see the Seth Rogen sense of humor. He's one of the producers of the show. And that is it, because it was clear product placement, but it had an on-screen reason for being there, much like 30 Rock used to do with Snapple. It's almost like if we're going to have to do the product placement, we're going to make it super obvious so that you can laugh, although the characters are taking it super seriously.
Yeah.
And now I want a Fresca.
I don't think I've ever had a Fresca, and I kind of don't really want one.
All right. And now we come to the moment that no one has been waiting for, because no one asked for this, but the most valuable performer, Babs. Who's your MVP?
I don't know who you're going to pick, because I have two people.
I always choose two people just in case we pick the same one, but go ahead.
Okay, so it's Homelander. For me, it was between Aya Cash and Homelander. Because Homelander in season 1 and in season 2, this actor can play this guy where he's just standing there, and with his face, he is so frightening and so menacing and so creepy all at the same time. Like, this breast milk drinking motherfucker, He is so scary without doing anything because of the threat of what you know he can do. And the actor plays him so well that you're just so, like, creeped out and afraid for your life at the same time. And it just, you get so much more of him being a creepy, scary, evil motherfucker in this season. Like, he literally has some scenes where, whatever the guy's name that can morph into other people is basically, fucking him. And in one, it's like he's fucking himself.
Ironically,
he's fucking himself.
In X-Men, his name was Morph.
So he was just doing some services for Homelander where he was turning into whatever person Homelander wanted to fuck.
I mean, to your first point, Aya Cash is basically Leon Lett getting chased down by Don Beebe. She was the best thing of the whole season until the last 3 episodes when she jumped the shark. The last Nazi little bit just
was too much Nazi for you?
She just didn't perform it well. Like, I don't think that her heart was in it, if I had to say it.
She didn't want to...
She played it very cartoonish. Like, she was legitimately scary.
How would you play an old Nazi bitch?
When she wanted to be scary. Like, when they had the girl fight in the last episode, that was frightening levels Stormfront. But when she's talking to Homelander about why the Nazi way is the right way, it's like, this just seems
It's just
corny.
ridiculous because,
you gotta speak with the passion of Adolf Hitler. I yell, or no one's gonna believe you. Like, you can't softly pitch, white supremacy. And to your second point, I also like that he did some very tender moments. Like, not everything you remember when he's basically Bizarro Superman. Well, I guess Bizarro is already a character in Superman. So when he's just
he's like heel turn Superman.
Yeah, mirror universe Superman.
Yeah,
but
darkest timeline Superman.
The parts that I always remember is that, like, when he does his breast milk drinking, you believe that shit.
It is some creepy shit.
He's not doing that to be scary. He legitimately looks like a dude that is enjoying the hell out of them breast milks. And when he does the moment with his kid, when his kid was like being overloaded by the super hearing thing, when they were at Planet Hollywood, then not Planet, whatever Vought version of Planet Hollywood was. Eating
there was a very tender moment where he talks to the boy and he's telling him,
trying to get him to understand, like, hey,
it's really hard and this is how it was for me. And you could tell in the moments with the son, a lot of times, those are the few tender moments that you see from him because he actually is trying to have some kind of a relationship with the boy. He can't have a real relationship with anybody because he's just a psycho.
And he also, Anthony Starr, why am I remembering all these actors' names all of a sudden? I don't know their names. But Anthony Starr plays Homelander. Also, like, he's all in. I mean, there's nothing, he's willing to make a complete fool of himself in service of that character. His last shot of him is masturbating on top of a building just to prove that he can, while he's, like, damn near crying. Like, that is... it's the saddest image I've ever seen of a superhero, and he sold it to me.
Oh, yeah.
So you made a good choice because he's crushing it. My pick is, I'm going to represent the District of Columbia, like always, and I'm picking Laz Alonso, Mother's Milk. He had the corniest dialogue because he's the glue, right? So in The Boys, he's the character that makes it all kind of work because he has a soul still. Like... Frenchie's kind of dead inside because he feels responsible for the lamplighter thing. The Wolverine, the girl, I don't even think she has a name.
Kimiko?
Whatever her name is. She's dead inside because, how she was raised, and then she gets her brother killed in this season. Then there's, we all know that Butcher is Butcher. And then, obviously, Jack still carries the torch for his ex and also is involved in the situation with Erin Moriarty. What's her character's name? Starlight. And then you have Mother's Milk, who can communicate with all of them and gets along with everyone. And whenever they have a moment, he can bring them all back. Whenever they get to the edge, where it's too much, too far, too soon, whatever, he can communicate with all of them effectively and bring them back. He delivered some of the corniest shit I've ever heard out of a character's mouth, and you believe it from him. And
it's the guy that was building a dollhouse for his kid.
Yeah, and he's just trying to get back to his family.
Yeah,
and you buy it. Like, you buy
but then
that
he
he's
shares
doing all
the
that.
story about his father and stuff, and that really makes him
right. Another corny thing, but he made it. He made it believable.
It worked for me.
And that's why, other than the fact he's from DC, he's my MVP. Lastly, time to give out our ratings, which is usually when we do this podcast, the most anticlimactic part of the podcast, because, shocker, I am going to rate this as rewatchable.
For sure. Like I said before, if you can stand the blood, guts, and gore, it is 100% rewatchable. If you're not into that, it wouldn't be watchable to you in the first place. But I think it's 100% rewatchable.
I can never get enough of Butcher saying cunt. I'm looking forward to that moment in every episode. I'm like, how many cunts is Butcher gonna just shout at no one in particular? I'm most worried about his story going forward, because how do you keep it interesting? And that will wrap up this episode of us breaking down The Boys Season 2. And thank you for listening. And if you were thinking that this was a waste of your time, remember,
no one asked for this!